Good morning, everybody. How you doing today? Brandon Steckler, tech editor of Motor Age Magazine, and we're back for another episode of Mastering Diagnostics. We're on episode 25 this time, and today I want to talk a bit about a customized scan tool PID list for analytical success. Now, listen, this is not going to be a video like the others we've done in the past regarding scan tool analysis. I'm not going to show you how to leverage the scan tool to make diagnostic decisions. Those are videos for other times. This one's about using the scan tool itself. This one's about building the PID list accordingly. And if you don't build a PID list properly, it could cause you some issues. So let me step back and explain for a minute. First of all, as we're aware, diagnoses are derived from analysis, meaning you or I, being the scientists we are, we gather information about a system or a component in that system, and we want to understand its functionality. We want to see if it's doing what it's supposed to do, or if it's doing anything at all. And we base our diagnoses on the information we gather. So a diagnosis is not the conclusion, the be-all, end-all, necessarily. Of course, the be-all, end-all, the end of the story, what we come up with is in fact a diagnosis. But a diagnosis is the result we obtain from information we analyze. So if I had a car, for instance, that wouldn't start, I'd hit the key and it wouldn't crank. My diagnosis is the engine will not crank. I will then go over and test the battery, and I will perform an analysis on the battery test results. And from that, I derive a diagnosis. Is the battery serviceable or is it not serviceable? Meaning, can I charge it and bring it back up to speed, or is the battery no good and requires replacement? That right there is a diagnosis. And my point of telling you that is, of course, the analyses we performed is focused on the data capture. That's the essence of a good diagnostician, one who bases his or her decisions on the data. We need to be able to reflect upon data that is captured accurately so we can make the right decision. So what does that mean for us? Obviously, that means us using the correct tool, like my Bosch ADS 625X right there over my shoulder. But it also means using the tool correctly. And what I mean by that, I'm going to be demonstrating to you when we head outside to my car. Now, let me back up and say this for a moment. First of all, when it comes to a scan tool, much like a lab scope or a DVOM or any tool that takes samples, it takes samples and reports the results of those samples to us. We can overdrive that component. We can push it beyond its limitations. Now, I always urge somebody to find those limitations on purpose ahead of time. Matter of fact, that's what a previous Mastering Diagnostics video was about. You'll find the link in the description below for that video. But if we push a tool too far, it can what we call undersample. And in fact, we can oversample as well, like in the case of a lab scope. If we have too many samples on the screen, a couple of things happen. One, we can pick up unwanted information, what we refer to as noise. But two, the trade-off of gathering a lot of information means we can only gather information for a short period of time. So my point is, there's undersampling and there's oversampling. And if we don't use the tool correctly, in other words, we don't gather the information that we desire properly and responsibly, that tool is not going to behave as desired. It's not going to behave as expected. It doesn't matter who made the tool. Every tool has limitations, and every tool has the possibility of being pushed beyond those limitations, meaning it's not going to report information as we desire, and that can cause us to make bad diagnostic decisions. So what does that mean for us? It forces us to see problems that don't truly exist, but it could also force us to miss problems that do exist, and either way can lead to an undesirable consequence. We're replacing parts unnecessarily, or we don't see the fact that the component is not behaving as it should. So I just want to remind you, being a scientist, as I am and as all of you are, whether you like it or not, We rely on the scan tool to make diagnostic decisions because, in essence, if you think about it, the scan tool becomes an extension of our mind and our hands. And what I mean by that is this: just like a PCM cannot feel the temperature of the air or the temperature of the engine, it can't see the angle at which the throttle is open or how fast that throttle changed positions. It can't truly see how fast the crankshaft or the camshafts are rotating and the proximity to one another, all of which are physical quantities that you or I experience as human beings through our senses. Of course, ECUs don't have that. They rely on sensors to report voltages and frequencies and such to infer or represent those physical quantities that they can't see or touch. The same holds true for the scan tool. You and I can't see these things occurring under the hood, just like the PCM can't. So we rely on sensor data, just like the PCM does, to make diagnostic decisions about what's going on within the systems that are being evaluated, whether we're talking about the functionality of individual components within a system or the system itself in which the components reside in. What we truly have to keep in mind is that this scan tool does not display live data. Of course, it's in our best interest for the scan tool to display as close to real life data as possible, but that just simply doesn't happen. Why? Because a scan tool delivers pre-digested data. Now, reflecting upon OBD2, the 10 modes of OBD2 we leverage as technicians every day. Mode 1 represents information. I'll basically call it a live data stream. So when we make a Mode 1 scan tool request, what we're really doing is asking the scan tool to reach out on the scan tool communication line to the ECU, let's say in this case a PCM, for instance. It will reach out and it will ask questions. It will make inquiries. So a Mode 1 scan tool request is request for information from the PCM. Now, what does the PCM do then? The PCM, if it's functioning properly and communicating, will put parameter identifiers on the screen. Things you and I are interested as technicians, like coolant temperature, engine speed, pressure inside the manifold, rate of airflow through the engine. These parameter identifiers, or PIDs, as we like to call them, are the inquiries being answered by the PCM. In other words, they're answers to the inquiries that we placed through Mode 1 service request. So when we ask for coolant temperature, the scan tool has to place that inquiry with the PCM. The PCM has to refer to its reference charts. In this case, what is the voltage value being reported by the engine coolant temperature sensor? Regardless of what that voltage value is, the PCM has to research that voltage value and how it correlates to a temperature. The PCM will then report that temperature by way of the scan tool through the communication line between itself and the scan tool. And then the scan tool will digest that hexadecimal format and place it on the scan tool screen as a visible PID for you and I to see. Now, my point is, that was one single PID. Today's PCMs can put out well over 100 PIDs. I've seen it myself, and I'm sure you have as well. Each and every one of those PIDs you see on the screen is an answer to an inquiry the scan tool made to the PCM. And every one of them takes time to answer. And after we answer all of those inquiries, we refer to that as one loop of information. And a loop takes time to complete. We refer to that rate of completion as loop speed. The more PIDs on the screen, the more latency there is in that information, meaning what we see on the scan tool screen is indeed from the past. We want it to be as close to real life as possible. But the more PIDs we put on the screen, the further from real life that becomes. So there's a couple of things that affect this loop speed. First and foremost, of course, the amount of PIDs we put on the screen. but also the capability of the scan tool, its processing speed. We also have to consider the processing speed or baud rate of the ECU and the speed of the network. For instance, a Class 2 data bus from years past shares information at a rate of approximately 10,000 bits of data per second, which is a snail's pace compared to today's speed. Going all the way back to mid-2000s, controller area network could share information at a speed of upwards of 500,000 bits of information per second, literally 50 times faster than that old Class 2 data bus. And even that in today's world is relatively slow. We talk about flight byte and Ethernet, and we have ungodly speeds. But my point is all those things affect information and the speed in which it's being shared. So how do we overcome that? First of all, we have to understand the limitations of the tool we're using. And with that, we have to leverage the tool at its best capability. And that means building ourselves customized data PID list. So in essence, instead of seeing 132 parameter identifiers on the screen, we can go into the scan tool and elect to ignore multitudes of them, meaning we ask the scan tool to only show us the information we are interested in. So rather than staring at 132 PIDs, for instance, we can choose to only stare at 10. Now, for one, that reduces the load on our brains. Our processing speed is limited as well as human beings. I would much rather stare at 10 parameter identifiers than well over 100. So it eases up the workload on our brain and our processing capability. But it also does the same for the scan tool. And what this truly does is it more accurately represents what's happening in real world conditions, close to real life, live information as possible. So for instance, by limiting scan tool data PID requests through mode 1, we can maintain a scan tool refresh rate of 50 milliseconds. That means up to 20 samples gathered and displayed per second. That's as close to real life as you're going to get from a scan tool, certainly fast enough for us to make accurate diagnostic decisions. So at this moment, we're going to head out to the core. We're going to connect our Bosch ADS 625X, and we're going to gather information from the PCM. And I'm going to show you how latency affects our diagnostic decision process.
So as mentioned earlier, the real name of the game when it comes to scan tool data analysis or any data analysis of any kind that you and I will acquire as technicians in our field, it's being able to see the right information at the right time. And of course, we lean on our scan tool, in this case, to deliver that information. Now, a scan tool is a device you and I use to speak with the computer, regardless of what system we're talking to, whether it's the anti-lock brake system, traction control, or the powertrain control module, or a body controller, or any one of the ECUs on any one of the networks. The data that you and I are requesting is, in fact, a request for data. So when we take our scan tool and we connect it to the vehicle, and we reach out and we ask for a specific PID, let's call it engine RPM, or even coolant temperature, the scan tool has to communicate that request on the network to said ECU, in this case, the PCM. And the PCM has to interpret the inputs, right, the voltage signals and what have you, and convert those electrical signals into an inferred physical quantity. And then the PCM will send that physical quantity as it's being reported via voltage signal back on the network to our scan tool, and our scan tool will digest that hexadecimal coding and regurgitate it on the screen for us to view as 76 degrees Fahrenheit or 822 engine RPMs. To do that takes time. It's a load on the scan tool, and that time we refer to as latency. So what's my point? My point is that if we ask the scan tool to do too much, it's not going to report the data we request accurately. And the problem is this: you and I as technicians learn, I preach it all the time, we have to learn to interpret the data we are acquiring like a pilot of a jet airliner learns to lean on his or her gauges when flying blindly at night through storm clouds. They can't see with their eyes, so they have to rely on their instrumentation to carry them through. You and I can't reach out under the hood, driving down a road at 70 miles an hour, and check the pressure inside the intake manifold. We lean on the scan data, the manifold absolute pressure sensor signal, to infer that pressure to us. Now, even if the pressure is correct, in that instance, if the scan tool cannot get that information to us fast enough, by the time we see that information, that pressure change in that intake manifold may have already occurred. Therefore, the information we are seeing has latency to it, and it's not giving us an accurate representation of what's happening right now. So what I want to do is this. I want to build a PID list. I want to grab a bunch of PIDs. Let's call it 32 different PIDs. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically ask the PCM, in this case, 32 questions back to back to back to back. For instance, what is engine RPM? What's the coolant temperature? What is the current throttle position? What's the pressure inside the intake manifold? How much air is this engine pumping? What are the oxygen sensors doing? Is the catalytic converter lit off? Things like that. Again, all those questions are inquiries, and it forces the scan tool to have latency. So we're going to reflect upon 3 graph PIDs. We're going to be looking at throttle position, accelerator pedal position, meaning request, versus what's actually happening, and right in between is going to be the command from the PCM to the throttle body to open the throttle. So again, what do I desire as the driver? What is the PCM going to do about it? And did that throttle body respond accordingly? So Bosch was nice enough to give me this ADS 625X, and I think it's a very handy scan tool. Wireless, easy to communicate with, works on a number of vehicles very well, and I'm purposely choosing Global OBD2. So we're going to look at mode 1, which is our live data stream. And I'm going to deselect all the PIDs. So we've got 63 PIDs here. And as I scroll through these, I just want to pick a couple. I'm going to go with relative throttle position. I'm going to go with information from the accelerator pedal. I'm going to go with the command from the PCM. And what we're going to do is we're going to graph all 3 of these PIDs out so we can see them respond to one another in almost real time. So I'm going to change these all to line graphs to watch how they correlate with one another. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to record information from, first of all, the accelerator pedal position. This is coming from my foot. After the PCM processes the request, it'll send a command out to the throttle body. And the throttle position sensor is, of course, our feedback saying, what happened to our throttle body? Did it do what it was told to do? And if you listen carefully, you will hear the accelerator pedal get depressed. I'll try and make a lot of noise by slamming it to the floor. I want you to watch the response. Again, accelerator pedal input, process request, response. Pedal to the floor. Instantaneously, the PCM saw the request, created the command, and carried out the desired function. I let off the gas pedal, and the exact opposite occurs. Now watch this. I'm going to depress the gas pedal 5 times rapidly and watch the response. Keeping in mind we only have 3 PIDs, 3 inquiries on the screen. So 5 rapid pedal depressions. Ready? Set? Go. All 5 were picked up by the scan tool, and everything responded as desired. There's 5 more. There's wide open throttle. I'm letting off the gas again. We'll do 5 more. And as you can see, everyone's happy. Now we're going to go back and plot the same information, but this time we're going to have 32 PIDs on the screen. So with 32 PIDs on the screen, there's a significant more load on the scan tool. So as you can see, every one of these PIDs that are highlighted here are inquiries to the PCM from the scan tool. So I'm going to expand to get them all on the screen, and I'm only going to use the ones relative to what we're looking at. Request from the pedal, commanded, and actual. So we'll only pay attention to these 3 right here. So I've got the information on the screen. These are our 3 graphs. This is our accelerator pedal position sensor, the input from my gas pedal. This is the request to the PCM to move the throttle. This is the command, the process information from the accelerator pedal position sensor, the command from the PCM to the throttle body to open the throttle. And this is the feedback, the throttle position sensor bolted to the throttle body. So as a test, I'm going to depress the accelerator pedal to the floor. You will see my input request, my command, and my output. The request was given, the command was given, and the response was the throttle opened. Now when I let off the accelerator, the request was given, the command was given, and the throttle body responded. Now watch what happens when I depress the throttle 5 times as I did in the previous capture. Ready? Set, go. You heard it with your own ears. Let's do it again. 5 more. Ready, set, go. 5 throttle pedal rapid depressions, and only a single one of them was recorded on the scan tool. So as you can see, it's not rocket science. It's pretty simple, but it is in fact science. A scan tool is not a magic device. A scan tool serves a purpose. It's to interpret data, serial data, and convert it to information you or I can recognize and use to our advantage. But a scan tool has to perform work. And if we overwork the scan tool, it cannot do its job properly. If you select too many PIDs, you force that scan tool to have latency, and the information collected does not accurately represent the current operating conditions. So if you are a really, really good diagnostician and you interpret information and make decisions based upon that information interpreted, you will make a mistake. But I purposely put together this video because I wanted to show you that all scan tools have latency. Every single one of them has latency. And yes, you can overload every single scan tool you own, whether it's an aftermarket device at the professional level, a basic device at the do-it-yourselfer level, or an OE level scan tool made by the manufacturer. Every single one of them gather information in a similar fashion. Therefore, overloading them with queries, PIDs requested, will cause them to have latency and will cause you to make diagnostic decisions that are incorrect. Not because you don't know what you're doing, but because you're making decisions based upon false information. Guys, thanks again for joining me on this episode of Mastering Diagnostics. I'm Brandon Steckler, tech editor of Motor Age magazine, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Take care.